everybody, welcome back to Daytime. Joshua Martyr is here. He's the author of Genesis the Hunter, books 1 and soon to be released 2. Is 2 out yet?
2 is out. It's just not, I don't have a hard copy of it yet, but it is out. So, orderable online.
Okay, beautiful. Welcome to the show, my friend. Let's start with talking, because this is a really cool genre. Maybe one of the biggest genres right now in terms of vampire and gothic lore. What was it that sort of drew you to this genre?
I've always had an interest in a little bit of the supernatural, whether it be the X-Men, Wolverine or anything like that, whether it be mythology, the Greek heroes, or anything like that, anything just beyond the level of man, so or humankind. So the vampiric thing is still the same thing. It's kind of like a human being, but more so. And I think that's what drove me to it. Yeah.
So, I mean, you went to school, you played football, you went to teachers college. But what was it that sort of made you go to the laptop? Because it's not an easy choice to decide to write a book.
Okay, well, this is exactly what happened. I'm in high school, and all of a sudden I start having this, kind of like a daydream of this one scene, this one really powerful scene, which is in chapter 2 of the book, which actually spawned the entire novel.
Set the picture for us.
Okay, let's set the picture. So we are in the Middle Ages, around 1483. And there is a sentry, which is like a soldier or a guard, who guards the outside of a town. He's not in the town. He's in a loft in a treetop outside the town. And he's guarding a town called Berwick upon the Tweed at night. And he's up there, and as he's up there, something that he thinks it's a man. He thinks they're 2 men actually, but there's something else. And they come towards his loft. And there's an interplay that occurs between the 2 of them. And it's this interplay, and it's that character, that sentry, who is the protagonist, the main character of the novel. And in that encounter, he is changed in body, in mind, in instinct. And he becomes this vampiric thing that we kind of, that we understand today. And so that whole action scene, it's very, very strong, a lot of imagery. And that is what the daydream was. And from that, the entire story kind of got spawned. So I had it in my head all through these years, all through the schooling, all through training for the football. After it was all done, I said, okay, it's time to write. And I want to do it.
I got to give you a shout out, because my daydreams in high school were, how do I get more nap? And what's for lunch? So good on you. And that's good that you kept it for so long. I imagine when writing a sort of genre that is very dear to a lot of people, very passionate with a lot of people, you sort of had to make sure it was authentic as well. What kind of research did you do to make sure you got the actual, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The book does involve a lot. Like I said, it does start in 1483, so it goes after the Black Plague. So I had to research, what was life like in Europe after the Black Plague, even to describe the setting, like this beautiful studio right here. Okay, I've experienced it. But what if I'm discussing a home in the Middle Ages? What does that look like?
Seriously?
What do the walls look like? What are they made of? They're made of wattle and daub. I need to research that. What do the floors look like? So to bring it all together, there is a lot of research that goes into it, and also the story parallels and goes through a lot of actual events in human history, even though it is a work of fiction. So I have to be careful that the chronology is in sync, and that everything is fluid and it makes sense, and the story has to be entertaining. At the same time, even while being accurate. So it's one of those novels that you can come away learning something from, that you're like, oh, that's really cool, that explains that in history, but at the same time, it's a nice, powerful work of fiction.
Are you a history teacher as well?
English.
English. Well, that makes sense. I mean, you got a little bit of both there.
And speaking of which, sorry to interrupt.
You got to give a shout out?
Hello, Langstaff.
Give them a big, should you be, right here.
Hello, Langstaff.
Should you be in class right now?
PhD.
Word up. Okay, so let's talk a little more about this, because I grew up loving like Interview with the Vampire, and I grew up loving a lot of really cool vampire things. Twilight's come out, it's done whatever it's done. Is your book sort of more based towards sort of old, authentic, like gothic views of the style, or is it more like a new age genre? Where are you going with it? I
would say it's a fairly different vision of the vampire. If I could liken it to one thing, it would be something like Interview with the Vampire, in the sense that it's not just about vampires. You're introduced to an individual, a man like yourself or myself, and this man you're introduced to before he becomes something else, and he doesn't know what he is, right? And so he has these changes, and all of a sudden he starts living through the ages, and he's coming from a time of, religious zealotism. So I mean, he understands it as being a curse of God. He doesn't understand his place in the world. So and when he starts to change, it's these changes that are occurring inside of him are detailed.
Yeah.
And so you were with him through the entire progression from the Middle Ages to the present day, and his story in the present day. So the story is different because it takes a very intimate view of the character, and it is also a very grounded vision of the vampire in the sense that if you look at the late Michael Crichton, who's one of my favorite authors, Jurassic Park, incredible story. The concept of dinosaurs being alive in the modern day, ludicrous,
absolutely,
right? But the way it's presented, you take the DNA from the mosquito, they clone it, and it's plausible now. In the same sense, Genesis of the Hunter is a very plausible story where it's rooted in evolution, where every population of animals has something else that hunts it, and that human beings are no different. And there just something happened to those hunters of human beings that caused them to fall into myth and legend, and it's the protagonist, the main character, that century, his influence on that population, and when he takes vengeance on what he has become.
Really interesting. And so you did the first book. Now, was the second book already conceptualized, or was it something where when you finished the first book, you're like, you know what, I got to keep going with this character?
It was actually, initially, it was one enormous novel.
800-pager.
Yeah, it was just something really large, and so the ideas are complete. And I had it all thought out, everything was planned, everything was researched, and then myself and my publisher, which is Damnation Books in California, we both decided to just split it in half. It would just be less intimidating to pick it up. It's a monstrosity, and just you pick one up and then you can read the next one, right? So the first one is this one, Genesis of the Hunter Book 1. Book 2 is orderable online at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, chapters.
Yeah. And if there's one thing, I got 30 seconds. Okay, really quickly, one thing you want the reader to take away from the first book, what would it be?
Enjoy the history, and enjoy just the power of the story.
Beautiful. All right, guys, go to the website for more information. Coming up next, we're going to be cooking in the kitchen with McMichael's brand new chef. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Daytime. Thank you, sir.